Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another episode of CSM Practice, where we give you all the most interesting frameworks, strategies, and things that executives like you have tried already in their companies and know to be working. And today we're going to share how Saood Shah, Senior VP of Monetate, has actually leveraged a framework called the 7 laws of SaaS onboarding at Monetate. What kind of impact did it have? What did it look like? What did he leverage? What works, what doesn't? How does that framework look like and works so that you too can download the framework from his landing page and try it out yourself? And without, welcome to the show.
Great to be here, Ari. Thank you.
For those who don't know Saood very well, he's actually been working for some snazzy companies. He worked at Siebel, at Computer Associates, at Gainside, which is where I met him, and now Monetate. So how long have you been with Monetate?
Yeah, it's been about a year.
What kind of customers does Monetate have? Large, small, and what kind of problems do you help them solve?
Monetate has customers that fit into all of the segments. We have enterprise customers that are very, very large. We have mid-sized customers and also smaller customers. I think that speaks to the flexibility of the solution as it can be used in a variety of different use cases.
Tell me about your CSM team. How big is the team? What structure do you have there? Do you split them by segmentation? Do you have segmentation?
Yeah, so we do have a CS team. I'm closely tied to the services team. And so it's a professional services team. We're focused, we're spread across North America, EMEA, and India. My team focuses on 2 aspects of services delivery. There's onboarding, where we take new customers and get them to be proficient with the system and get them to a point where they can derive value from the platform very, very quickly. And then there's the post-onboarding, ongoing value and outcomes acceleration. And so we have consulting staff that is very technical, that are product experts, and they're able to build out experiences very quickly with and for the customer. And we also have strategy consultants that are proficient with conversion rate optimization. They're very proficient with testing plans and creating robust testing plans and ensuring that we are surfacing the right set of recommendations. So in tandem, the technical staff alongside the strategic staff deliver a ton of value to our customers and help accelerate their path to maturity.
Well, I assume this is all paid services. Is the professional services ever involved in non-paid services?
It's pretty much all paid services.
All paid services. Maybe you could share a little bit. What have you learned from your perspective is the best way to work with customer success teams?
I look at the 2 teams in terms of services and CS as they need to be tied to the hip. We are no longer in a world where we deliver services for the sake of margin. Those years are way behind us. In our world of SaaS, it's all about services in pursuit of ARR, GRR, NRR. It's about services that drive customer outcomes and ultimately result in a customer renewing or expanding. And so services is all about customer success, starting with that basic philosophy around what is the mission of a services team is super important to set the stage. I think secondly, we have to understand that now, since services and CS are aligned on the same goals, then there needs to be an alliance almost between services and CS around how we get to those goals. So one of the first and the biggest things that I think of is the golden thread of value. We have to clearly identify what is value. What are the outcomes that the customer is looking for? What are the key KPIs that this customer wants to improve? And I refer to those as the golden thread of value. And that needs to be captured in the sales cycle. Now, too often I find that the salesperson sets up a business case, sells the customer, services goes off and does the implementation. And it's a very technical process, but we lose sight of those KPIs and those outcomes. And by that time, the exec sponsor has lost interest and they're off doing something else. And then the CSM has to restart from scratch. I advocate something slightly sacrilegious, maybe a little bit controversial, which is I believe that the first version of the success plan should be created in onboarding. And we should take what we've learned from the sales team and add that to the success plan. We should layer in what we've learned during the onboarding. We should layer in what we expect this customer's usage to be and where we feel their usage needs to go from a telemetry standpoint. And that correlates with the success we expect them to have with the platform. And then also layer in risks and issues that we expect this customer have, and then pass that to the CS team almost as something that is a version 1 or 1.5 that the CS team can run with and go directly towards driving outcomes as opposed to starting from scratch. And so in summary, I think it's important for the services team to capture that golden thread of value from the sales team, but it's just as important to add to it and pass it on to the CS team. The CS team can run with it.
Are you doing it?
Yeah, actually we are. We have a motion where the sales team, it's a mandatory set of fields in Salesforce where they absolutely have to put in that information. And then during our services process, we actually have a component of our onboarding where our strategic consultant engages with the customer to talk about business outcomes, KPIs, what they're trying to achieve. And then we create a success plan or a strategy plan that indicates here's the art of the possible, here's where we want you to go with our platform, and we build a corresponding implementation plan. And then these are the two things that we hand off to the CSM once onboarding is complete.
I almost have a sense that that's why you have this specialized role of a strategy consultant within the PS, because let me tell you, the tactical guys that are super technical, even the project managers, it's hard to teach them that art of discovery and creating strategic and success plans. How do you involve, if at all, the CSM in this process? Or is the CSM only getting a handover at the end of the professional services gig? What is working for Monetate these days?
No to the handoff at the end. Like, I think that if we did that, there would be a bunch of surprise and it would be a little abrupt. What we typically find is the CSM is the owner of the executive relationship. So we don't want to let that go. And so essentially, we split into two threads when onboarding starts. There is that exec thread that the CS does the handoff from the sales team, and they continue to manage that exec relationship. And then the onboarding is typically managed. And so they're almost a passenger watching the onboarding happen, ensuring that the onboarding ties to what the exec vision is. And then also listening and thinking about the strategic conversation around outcomes and KPIs, so that when there is that handoff, all that's happening is that we're switching seat. The CSM is then taking the lead on the value realization and outcome conversations, and PS then is sort of helping.
Sounds like during the onboarding, the CSM functions as a listening post, as a quarterback to handle and continuously nurture executive relationship and making sure that they're up to date, but also as a listening post to say the team reporting to the executive are telling him things that they don't get a chance or don't feel comfortable telling the professional services team, but the executive will relay it back to the CSM. And then it's the CSM's responsibility to relay that back to the professional services team.
That works.
Yeah, that's during onboarding, but then reverse. Once you're done with the implementing the technical solution, you achieved first value delivered, they're starting to use it, they're starting to seeing results. There's no need for a handover because the CSM had been involved and up to date the entire process.
Yeah. And I think there's a little more in that 90% of our customers purchase post onboarding services. So services aren't going anywhere. We just stopped the onboarding piece. And now we're talking more about, all right, let's look at your success plan. Let's look at the number of products that you want to implement. What's the ordering? What's the sequence? And then within a product that we've already implemented, how do we drive further acceleration of value? How do we actually get you to those KPIs that you're trying to get to and get you to those outcomes faster?
After the onboarding is complete, Who updates those? Is it your strategy team or is it the CSM?
Yeah, I think that success plan, we create version one, hand it off to the CSM, and then the CSM is generally responsible for that contract, for the post onboarding piece of the customer journey.
So you don't hand off the account, but you do hand off the success plan.
We hand off the account too. After the onboarding, the CSM is largely responsible for the renewal, the customer relationship, the health score. They're talking about the expansion. So ultimately, whether we win or lose in that account hinges on the renewal. And largely, it's the CS team that quarterbacks that and ensures that the customer usage and the sentiment and the outcomes they're seeing line up with their expectations.
You've been in professional services almost your entire career, I suppose. What has drastically changed in the last, I don't know, 5, 10 years in terms of KPIs for professional services ever since the customer movement took off?
There were a few metrics that have stayed constant. And then I think we've added a few to our radar, to our dashboard. So back in the day, services was measured by margin. And margin is largely dependent on billable utilization. And so billable utilization and productive utilization have been a mainstay of PS metrics for a while. I also like to look at booking rate and billing rate to give us almost leading indicators around how our margin will measure up. I also like to look at telemetry, so product utilization, and then also CSAT to give us a sense for how people are using the product and then also how they're feeling about their customer journey. Billable utilization, productive utilization, margin, bill rate, book rate. These are the ones that PS has always been focused on. More recently, I feel like to align with our CS friends, we need to have our finger on the pulse of how the customer is feeling about our platform and whether we've set them up for success. Notice that those metrics were all about efficiency and how effectively we are monetizing our billable capabilities. And so when you look at CSAT, it's more about, is this customer feeling like they're set up for success? Product telemetry, typically we like to correlate product adoption and usage with customer success and ROI. So it's almost an approximation for ROI. And so has the PS team been successful in ramping up usage to a point where we feel they are getting value from the product? And then I think more recently, we've been engaged in thinking hard about just GRR, NRR. And so surfacing opportunities for expansion using services that are embedded in the account. You have SQLs, you have CSQLs, which are customer success qualified leads, and you could potentially have PSQLs, which are professional services qualified leads. And so the innovative PS teams are trying to drive expansion through services.
Got it. So it sounds like you're well on your way to add a few more metrics to how you manage the team and track performance and efficacy, including a very lagging indicator like GRR, PSQL, which is counterpart for the CSQL, opportunities that your team finds for expansions, and CSAT. How overall do they feel like they're getting value from the services? Is it a good experience for them? Because we know the formula for customer success is customer outcomes and customer experience. So we can not watch out for how they value the experience with us. You talk a lot about driving value and how this is becoming way more on the forefront for professional services team, not just customer success. It seems like customer success methodologies are gradually infused into professional services. How do you gauge for customer outcomes and how do you audit an account to say, are they getting enough value?
We recently introduced a motion at Monetate called the value audit. And essentially, what we were finding was that we had a few customers that may not have been getting value at the pace that they expected it. We weren't looking out for that. And so we created a motion in conjunction with the CS team. And these are customers that have been onboarded for a while. These are customers that are in the field. They've already been onboarded. Maybe they've been using the platform for 9 months or 8 months, and maybe this is sort of a precursor to the renewal, or even at the 1.5 year mark in a 2 or 3 year cycle, where we come in and we look at, all right, let's look at all the products that you're using. Let's look at how much you're using them. We actually have ROI metrics built into the platform. And so we're able to see what has been the uptick in their conversion, in their AOV, what's been in their average order value, how effectively have we upped their numbers. And then we try and correlate that with the value that the customer expected to receive from the platform, which is a little bit, it's a combination of tech and fuzzy. Like it's a little subjective and it's a little objective. And we came up with this concept of a value audit, which is a 360 view of, is this customer getting value as they expected to? And we try to answer that basic question. And then the output of that audit is yes, no, to what extent, with a numeric rating, and then a breakdown of that numeric rating into a number of different dimensions. And then most importantly, suggestions and recommendations around how to increase and how to accelerate that customer's road to maturity and outcomes.
Is this something you can only do for enterprise clients, or can you imagine a world where Monetate has a very large, long tail customer base and you can absolutely do this in a more scalable manner?
Yeah, in fact, the value audit has a few different flavors. We have a flavor for enterprise customers. We also have a flavor for customers that are not so large. And then within the value audit, there's 4 or 5 different components. Not every component is going to be relevant to every single customer. And so, for example, some of the smaller customers, we're able to just look at a Looker dashboard based on their telemetry and able to arrive at some suggestions and recommendations. 2, we're able to look at their website and look at how their website may or may not be performing and deliver some recommendations there. Absolutely. We have a number of different flavors. And then we're able to, based on the customer, their size, how they're using the platform, we're able to do the right type of audit for that customer.
Well, I'm super curious. How do customers respond to your value audit? What is some of the feedback that you heard from customers after performing one? The reason I ask, by the way, do they perceive it as a valuable activity for them, or does it mostly serve Monetate to mitigate risk?
I think it's both. For a number of customers that have been customers for a while, this serves as a great reset. In a number of customers, we use the value audit to also engage with the exec stakeholder that may be absent from week to week execution. And sometimes maybe they're not even showing up to QBRs. So this is almost like a wake-up call to some customers to say, hey, look, we're not sure how much value you're getting, and we want to help. And so typically I'm seeing some of this happen a few months significantly before the renewal so that we can put a get well plan in place potentially, and then ramp their usage, ramp their adoption, ramp their value to a point where the customer is feeling super positive. We did one recently with a customer that I can't disclose, and they are thrilled. We actually did the readout of the value audit with the QBR. We did it at the same time, and then we took the customer out for dinner later. Ultimately, it was just a fantastic experience for them because they felt like we were putting ourselves in their shoes and trying to figure out what is value for them. And they appreciated that. And so when we come back and say, we believe you're getting this kind of value for your particular business, for your particular website, without having to hear it from them, I think they appreciate that. And then when we come back with suggestions, recommendations, and proactively do that, it's typically a very positive conversation.
Do you ever see a future in which you charge for a value audit? Or if not, do you see a future where a customer, after having one done, is actually asking you to include that every year? Like literally saying, hey, we haven't done an audit in a while. Can we do that again? Or you have to include that in the contract as something that you owe that to us like literally every year?
We have flavors of the value audit. Few of our flavors are very, very involved and are very, very detailed. They require very detailed analysis. And then the suggestions, recommendations take a lot of time and effort to put together. For those versions, we absolutely charge for because it's strategic work. And then we have flavors of the value audit that are super automated. And for those, we don't charge. And we're able to look at those and come back with almost automated recommendations. And so that's how we differentiate between the two.
Okay. When did you first launch this value audit?
It's about 6 months ago.
How did you come up with the idea? And was there like a challenge you were trying to solve for?
We were receiving customer feedback from some customers, from a segment of customers, that they weren't seeing enough value fast enough. So it was, how do we accelerate the pace of value? And that's a very ambiguous question. To solve that problem, we essentially created a motion to think about, all right, well, what is value for this customer? How do we measure it? And how effectively have we delivered value for this customer? And when we tried to solve that problem, it seemed like it had 10 different dimensions that this customer could get value from. And so we had to create a rubric, a heuristic, ways to calculate, where things were previously largely ad hoc, where now we put some thought into calculation and we figured out, all right, well, here's how we want to score this particular dimension. And I think that went a long ways in us figuring out what is value for a particular customer. And then from that, we could see from our scores where the gaps were. And then we created a library of, well, if this score is low, here is the playbook. If this score is low, this is the path we want to go down. There's a lot of pathways through this journey that are still undocumented because it would be a lot of work to build out all the materials for every single potential permutation combination up front. So we have our day jobs when we're sort of managing our customers. And so the way we chose to do it is we're going to build it as we go. So we have a customer, we went through a pathway, we build out the materials for that, and then that becomes the template for that pathway moving forward.
It's so high level at the moment. Can you give me like one example of a dimension? Take an easy one, not like so bespoke for Monetate, but like something that you might even do for a different company if you go work for one, or like a previous company you worked for, so that it resonates with our audience. And how do you even know that it's a dimension? And kind of like, what do you do after you identify this as a relevant dimension? Like, how do you score it? And like, can you walk me through that process?
Absolutely. So let's take one dimension that's an easy one to understand is the technical one. It's the integration audit. For example, our customers are integrated with our platform, and as a consequence, they're sending us data on a very regular basis. Now, we can look at that data and we can see, are they sending special characters? Are they sending us all of the data that they need to be sending? Is the data formatted correctly? Are the API calls that they're making, do they have the right parameters, et cetera, et cetera? So we have Looker dashboards that give us the health of the integration. So we can look very closely and understand this customer is sending us everything that they need to, but this customer has special characters which are breaking our backend system. So we need to go back to this customer. The technical dimension of that health score will be red for that part of it. That's one aspect of the survey where we look at the feed, we look at the integration, and we're clearly able to put a score on it to say, is the data they're sending us, is that a valuable part of sort of our analysis that we give back to the customer and gives them value? Or is the data they're sending us garbage in, and then we're essentially giving them garbage out? And so hence, they're getting less value from the platform than they could if they were sending us the data formatted correctly. So one of the 10 dimensions is technical integration. And that's sort of how we look at it and evaluate it and score it. And then we have clear recommendations for our customer to say, hey, look, you're making this API call, you're passing us this parameter, it's not formatted correctly. Can you please fix that in your code?
Okay, and I could totally see how you could do that for a large enterprise company as well as a very small customer and almost completely automate the entire process. Can you give me examples for other dimensions that you have in that group of dimensions that you could potentially go through an value audit with a customer besides integration?
I think the other aspect is how effectively they're using our testing feature. And so we have some customers that have a robust test plan, and they're following that test plan to the T. And it's very, very orchestrated. It's called the Test and Learn initiative. So the point is you test and then you learn, and then you do more tests and you learn some more, and you keep testing and learning. And each learning contributes to an increase in value, because every time you learn something, you make a decision on your e-commerce or website, which is the result of a test that you made, which should incrementally increase your revenue, increase your conversion. You need to continuously test and learn, test and learn. Sometimes we see customers that don't have a robust test plan. So one week they test one thing, another week they test another thing, and they're not tying these learnings together into a consolidated work effort to improve the quality of the website or improve the quality of their app. We look very carefully at the tests that our customers are running, how they're running their test, how robust their testing plan is, and whether they have a test plan or not, and whether they're following it. And that's one more example of a dimension that we sort of look at.
So it's a 2 out of 10. When you think about the other dimensions, are they mostly related to system architecture, like data integration and testing? Or do you also have aspects related to, have they taken training? Do they have a designated admin? Things that are more like the behavior of the customer versus the features and how they're using it.
Yeah, I think one aspect of our audit is maturity. And so, how well developed is this customer's proficiency with testing and recommendations? And how effectively are they building out their plan around how they're going to orchestrate the recommendations, etc.?
How does this tie, by the way, with the 7 laws of SaaS onboarding? How does that framework help you come up with a value audit?
One of the key learnings from the 7 laws is we need to iterate and test and continuously optimize whatever strategy we have, whether it's your services methodology or whether it's your methodology around your test plan. And so one of the key things that you learn from testing in general is iteration and innovation. I think services teams, as they're trying to drive value and outcomes, can't be stagnant. They can't just sort of build it once and let it stay. There's sort of an iteration that happens where, whether you're orchestrating outcomes from day one, or you're driving time to value, or you're trying to master operational rigor, it's all about starting simple, delivering, iterating over time, and that iteration gets you to more innovation and leads you to higher quality. So there's lots to learn from a robust testing framework for SaaS and services professionals, for sure.
As the VP of Professional Services, obviously you abide by the laws. How did that help you navigate your first year in that seat as a senior VP of services at Monetate?
I think for me and for any services leader, it's very easy to get overwhelmed with the different responsibilities that fall on your shoulders. It's very easy to get overwhelmed by, should I be figuring out what my bookings are? Should I be focusing on selling more services? Or should I focus on optimizing my services? Should I go and build out my PSA in more detail? Should I be looking at more metrics? Am I making customers happy? Am I leveraging AI enough? How effective is my operational rigor? How do I balance between driving my services margin versus driving my GRR and NRR? There's so many question marks that services leaders have. And as a consequence of the consulting that I've done, and I've engaged with so many services leaders, and the confusion is definitely there. The point of the 7 laws is to provide a very simple starting point to say, hey, look, don't focus on 40 different things. Just focus on these 7 things. And here's how you can do it. There's actually best practices in there around here's 3 things you can do to orchestrate outcomes from day one. One of them is build a success plan. There's some very basic things around 3 best practices around how to optimize for time to value. There's 6 key metrics around operational rigor, not 20, not 30, but there's 6 metrics that can help you have your finger on the pulse of your services business.
I think it's a good recap for everything we talked about today. So if anybody wants to download the 7 laws of SaaS onboarding, you're welcome to actually download it and get inside his brain a little bit more. And I bet I'm going to include the link to his LinkedIn profile, because I bet if you have any questions or you just need an accountability buddy and you want to start friendships with smart people like yourself, you can reach out to him on LinkedIn and he'll be happy to talk to you about his formula and framework here.
I would. I love talking about onboarding. I love talking about PS operations and professional services methodology. If anyone has any questions at all, I would love to chat and discuss this in more detail. It's a lot of fun.
Love it. And I want to mention too, you're actually on the advisory board of a number of startups. Some of them are very successful. Maybe you can share a little bit. And are you looking to be on an advisory board of other startups if somebody inclines to want to have you as part of their strong support system?
Hey, I had fantastic mentors and I had a lot of fantastic advisors that helped me along the way. I'm definitely looking to give back. If anyone needs help, I'm happy to help them in a formal or informal capacity. And if they just want to chat, just want to have coffee and discuss services and services methodology, services strategy, service operations, love that. Happy to chat.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this conversation, please comment below, give this video a like, and subscribe to our YouTube channel so the YouTube gods know this channel actually rocks. With that, it's a wrap. I'll see you on the next video.